What up? WINBUSH here. Today I'm excited to show you guys how you can take the hair and animations from Cinema 4D, bring them into Unreal, and have them running in real time, and they're actually dynamic. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. Before I get started, I just want to give a quick shout out to ASUS for lending me this 4K monitor. This thing is beautiful. I've been running all my tutorials and doing all my client work on it lately. And then also the Studio Book Pro that I have here, the laptop. I've ran a couple of tutorials on that too. Just click on the link up top. You see the Star Wars tutorial that I ran off this laptop. This thing is a beast as well. And speaking of beasts, I know you notice over here in the corner this brand new Zydex. I think that's how you say it, Zydex. But yeah, they built this beast of a machine here. It has an AMD Threadripper 3, 128 gigs of RAM running this machine. I've been doing a lot of real-time rendering with Unreal with this thing since last night, and this thing is crazy. So I just wanted to give a quick shout out to everybody, and let's jump right into the tutorial. I'll show you exactly what this beast could do. So we're going to get started with Cinema 4D. Actually, we're going to get started with Mixamo just because it's a quick way that we could get some animations and we could get a default character in here. So I'm just going to use this default character that we have right here. I think his name is like Ybot, but if you don't have it, his name is Ybot. You just search it and he'll pop up in here. And so what I want to do now is, before anything, I'm going to need to bring in a T-pose, and this is a real important part because in Unreal Engine we're going to start our character off with a T-pose, and then we're going to add our animation. If we don't start off with the T-pose, the hair is not going to connect correctly and it's just going to go all out of whack. So this is something I'm really excited about because it took me a long time to figure this out. So if I just come over here and type in T-pose up in my search window here, there we go, we have the T-pose right there. So from here, we just click download, and then I'm going to keep it as an FBX. My frame rate, I can run it at 24. You can go 24 or 30. You can't run it at 60. When I was doing my test, there's some stuff inside that all the hair stuff in Unreal is kind of beta right now. And so if I went anything over 30, it just crashed immediately. So 24 or 30 is a good safe number to roll it there. Leave the skin on, and I'm gonna just click download. Okay, so I have my T-pose downloaded. Now I'm just gonna find an animation. In my example, I just did running, so maybe we'll just type in running here. See what we have. Maybe we'll do something. Hey, let's do like this scary run. You can see like he runs off the screen here. So what I'm gonna do is click on in place. Now he's just gonna run in place and he's not gonna move at all. So I'm just gonna leave these at the default for right now and just click download. So same thing, I'm gonna do 24 frames per second, FBX with skin, click download. And then we'll get this saved, and then we're gonna bring everything into Cinema 4D. So let me save it there. Then I'm gonna click open folder, and I have my files here that I just downloaded. And I'm actually going to, let's see, I made a folder for this project. So I'm gonna click and drag these into my Cinema 4D folder that I made for this project. Like originally it was in the download folder. So now I have my stuff organized in here. Actually, let me make a folder in here for Mixamo, because I'm going to be saving out FBXs from Cinema 4D. And so now I'll name this one UE4. Actually UE4, that's Unreal 4. So these are my folders that I'm making. I'm just organizing right now. So this one that says Mixamo has my FBXs in here, and then later on I'm going to save it out into the folder for UE4, and that's where I'm going to stick my FBXs that I'm going to bring into Unreal. So let's just click and drag this T-pose in here. Not going to mess with anything in here. Just click OK. And so now I have my character in here, my T-pose. And there's one weird thing when you bring in the stuff from Mixamo. If you see over here on the right hand side, like everything is all grayed out. I'm not sure why it does that when you bring it into Cinema, but an easy fix that I've come to find is just select everything here, hit copy, and then just start a new project and then paste it. And now you have access to all your stuff in your window down here. I'm not sure why it does that, but that's what it does. So that's just a quick and easy fix to be able to have access to everything down here in that window. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to export it from Cinema 4D as an FBX. And the reason I'm doing this is just so everything is aligned with my Cinema 4D project. I know we downloaded the FBX from Mixamo, but doing it this way, I was able to keep everything aligned for when I added the hair to it. And so let's click OK. And I'm going to save this one in the folder for UE4. So I'm going to just name this one T-Pose. And then click Save. Okay, cool. So now what I'm going to do is make sure I have my alpha surface selected over here. And I'm going to come up to simulate, and I'm going to come down and add hair. And now you can see that we have hair that's going all out of whack. I'm going to fix this up a little bit. So let's come down to our guides here. And for my root, I'm going to do polygon area. And then I'm going to bring the length down just a tad bit till we can start seeing like our figure there. So maybe somewhere around 25 is cool because we still want to have some type of hair that could bounce around and everything. And then for my count, right now it's at 17,336. Let's just crack this up to like 50,000. Give that a second to calculate. And then for my segments, I'm not sure if this makes a difference, but I put 15 on here just to give it a little bit more, I guess, detail in there. But that's what I did for that. And so now we want to make a limbic file for our hair to be able to bring this into Unreal. So I'm going to come up to my hair, right click, and come down to bake as a limbic. And before I do that, we only need one frame of this. So I'm going to take my timeline where it says 90, click 0. And now we're just going to have like one frame in our timeline here. And so now I want to come up to my hair and come down to bake as a limbic, because all of our dynamics is going to actually come from Unreal Engine, which is really cool. This is something that they just added. And so where I want to go from here is I'm going to go for UE4. I'm going to click OK. Okay, so now that's exported. You can see here the path that it exported to. So it says path to Alembic, and then it has hair.abc. ABC stands for Alembic. And then we're done with this file here, but I'm just going to save it as a Cinema 4D file just for our reference in case we ever need to go back to it. So I'm going to just name this one T-Pose, and this one will be a .c4d file. This has nothing to do with Unreal. I'm just saving my project file. So I'm going to click Save. Okay, so now let's add in a running FBX that we downloaded from Mixamo. So I'm going to import this. If I click play, you can see our character is running in place here. And before I do anything else, I'm going to do the same thing I did before. Select everything, make a copy, come over to File, New Project, and let's click Paste. And then let's click Play again. Let's make sure our project file is at 24 frames per second. So it's actually not. So I'm going to come up here to Output, just come down 24. Then we want to make sure that our project is also in 24. So we come over to Project Settings. Then over here over FPS, I'm going to click 24. Now our project should be 24 frames per second. Everything's going to be running in real time in Unreal, so we can make this actually a really long loop. So let's make this project like 500 frames. Okay, we don't need to worry about render times or anything like that. So I'll come up here to my upper right hand corner where it says layout and startup. I'm going to click on animate, and then you can see down here we have all of our keyframes from Mixamo. They're already selected, so I'm going to hold down Control. Oops, do it like this. Make sure they're all selected. Hold down Control and just drag them over. And what I'm going to do is hold down Control, left click, and drag over. I had to hit Control Z. Let's try this again. And drag this over. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag this out for the entire duration of our scene here. So let me do this real quick. And this way we'll have a running loop that's like 500 frames. Okay, so when it's all said and done, I ended up making it 863 frames. I just kept, doing that method where I would hold down Control, select all my keyframes, left click, and drag over, and just keep making copies of that. And I ended up at 863 here. So now if I click play, you see that we just have a continuous running loop of this guy just running in place. It's going to take a couple of seconds here, and that should be good for bringing into Unreal. So before I do anything else, Let's go back up to our layout, go to my startup. Then I'm gonna come over to file, save project as. I'm gonna name this one running. And again, this is just for my Cinema 4D reference. If I ever need to come back to this file, I have a saved file for it. So I click save for that. So now what I wanna do is I wanna save this out as an FBX animation for what we just created here. So what I'm gonna do is come up to file, come down to export, and then let's export in FBX. And what I want to make sure I have clicked is I'm going to have it on 2016 for the FBX version. And then down here for animation, make sure you have tracked and bake all tracks selected. And then that should be good. You can leave everything else as you see it here. I'll give you guys a second to see everything that I have clicked. But I believe these are the only two things that I added. Everything else was already clicked here. So I'm going to click OK. And now I'm going to save this into my UE4 folder. Let me click on save. Give it a second to export. Okay, so we should be done with Cinema 4D now. So the next step is I'm gonna close out Cinema 4D. Click no. All right, cool. So now we're gonna get into Unreal Engine. So I'm gonna click on my Epic Games launcher. Give this a second to launch up. And this is real important. The hair stuff is added in version 4.24. So make sure you have the latest version of Unreal installed. Right now I'm using version 4.24.2. So I'm gonna click launch on here. So now we come up with our Unreal project browser. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna select this one for film, television, and live events. This works now, so just click next. Then I'm just gonna start with a blank template. Click next. I'm gonna do no starter content, ray tracing disabled by default. And then for my project file, I'm just gonna name this one, let's run running here. Cool. So for my project name, I named it running here. I have my folder selected that I wanna put it into. So yeah, I wanna put it in there, and then let's click create project. And then there's a couple of steps that we're going to need to take to get everything set up for a scene here. So now we have Unreal opened up. So down here in the lower left-hand corner, it says project file is outdated. Would you like to update? I just click update. I'm not sure what it's doing there, but everything seems to be fine. It says new plugins are available. Let's click manage, because this is kind of important too. So you notice that I clicked the template for film and broadcast. And so to be able to use those, you want to make sure that you have these installed. These are free. So this is called the Oddjob Media Player, and this one's called the Blackmagic Media Player. So if you're new to Unreal, it's going to ask you, it's going to say, okay, so you click the film and broadcast, go to the marketplace and download these, and it would actually take it there. So you just make sure you accept and download, and then it's automatically enabled for you right off the bat. So with that out the way, I want to click on here where it says built-in, and then under search, I'm going to type in GROOM. And so this is the new plugin for Unreal that will allow us to bring in hair. So I want to enable it, and it's going to say plugin Alembic GROOM importer is a beta version. Are you sure you want to enable it? Click yes. And then same thing for the GROOM underneath it. Click enable. It's going to say, you know, are you sure you want to do this? It's a beta version. Click yes. So just to recap, we have Alembic GROOM importer selected, and we have the GROOM selected, both of them enabled. And then down here in the lower right hand corner, it's going to say Unreal Editor must be restarted for the plugin changes to take effect. We hit restart now, and that's going to enable the plugin. It's going to restart real quick. It shouldn't take too long, but it's going to do this every single time that you start a new project in Unreal. And if you don't want to go through this, like, you know, if there's a couple of plugins that you want enabled all the time, I actually did a tutorial on how to keep it permanently enabled. It's actually a text document. You have to manipulate some stuff, and then you have your plugins here automatically enabled. I'll link that down below and up above me here. So now we have our GROOM. If I type this in, now it's all enabled. So there's one more step that we're going to need to take before we get started here. And so this one is actually in the Unreal documentation, which I'll link down below as well. But if you come over here, it will tell you these two options that you're going to have to enable and disable for this stuff to be able to work. And so I'm just going to select and copy, and I'll leave a link to this direct documentation down below. I actually put it in a comment so it's easy to find. And so you'll be able to click on it and find exactly where I'm at in here. And so I copied and pasted, or I copied and I'm going to paste it into my settings here. So I come up to settings, come down to project settings, and then up here in the search bar, this is one of the cool things about Unreal. You can kind of just search for what you want. And so right here under engine rendering, it says optimization, support, compute skin cache. And so I want to enable that. And then down here in the lower right hand corner, you notice it's going to say we need to restart, but don't restart yet. There's one more thing that we have to disable, which is again in this documentation where it says tick animation on skeletal mesh inish, which I guess means initiate. So I'm gonna select that and copy it just so it's easy to find in here. So I'm gonna come back to my search bar here, hit Control V, and you can see that this is enabled and we actually want to disable it. And so just to recap, you came up to settings, come down to project settings, you go to that documentation that I just showed you from the Unreal site. You want to find where it says project settings, and it will tell you right here the two things that you need to enable and disable. And then now, actually let me close this out. So now in our lower right hand corner where it says restart now, let's click that. So now over here under content browser, let's click import, and let's find where we had our files. Remember I made them for UE4. So I want to start with my T-Pose FBX that I exported from Cinema 4D. So I'm going to click on that, click open, and then for this I'm going to import animations. Even though we had no animations, I found out this worked best for me. And so make sure you have on click import animations, scroll down, see if there's anything else. I believe everything else is by default. So now we just click import all, and we should see a bunch of stuff pop up in the content browser here. You can ignore all of this, just click the X. So now we have a T-pose, and we have a T-pose animation, and we have a skeletal mesh. So now let's import our running sequence. So I clicked on import here. Let's come up to running. Let's click open. And now when it says under skeleton, let's click on our T-pose one. I think it's already selected, but make sure you select that one. It says T-pose skeleton, and then import animations, exported time. Everything looks good here. So now let's click import all, and we should be good to go after a few moments. Again, can ignore that. So now we have our running animation and we have our T-pose. So before we start with the hair, let's get our animation up and ready to go. So I'm going to click on T-pose here, bring in my character. So it's the T-pose is the one that has the purple highlight right here, and it says skeletal mesh. I bring that into my scene, and I can actually delete this little controller. This is if you want to make it into like a gaming level. That's where your player would start at. So I'm just going to delete that. And I'm going to click on my T-pose here in my world outliner in the upper right hand corner, and under transformation, I'm going to just zero everything out. Okay, so now we're in exact zero. I know it goes under the floor a little bit here. I can actually click on my floor, just bring it down, because I want to go by the exact zero of my mannequin here. So now the next step is we have to make like an animation sequence, which is kind of like an NLE editor. Like this is where we could bring our character in and we can add all of our animations and everything. You can also add like your camera and all types of stuff. I mean, it's pretty cool, but that's a whole nother tutorial. So we want to come up to cinematics, click on this, add level sequence. And then I'm just going to leave it at default where it says new level sequence. I mean, you can name it what you want, but I'm going to just leave it at default. Click save. So now you'll notice down here, we have a window called sequencer, and it looks just like an NLE editor, like if you're working in Blackmagic Resolve or whatnot. And so what we could do from here is we can make sure we have our character selected here, our T-pose, come back down to our sequencer, click on track, and where it says actor to sequencer, add T-pose. So now we have our T-pose character. It's kind of like having a layer in here. So if you're used to working in like After Effects, this is exactly what we're doing. So we're bringing our object into our timeline here. And this is where we can start adding like the animations and stuff. And so where it says animation right here, And when I left click, and you can see that we have two animations here that we can select from. So actually, if you wanted to bring in more from mixing mode, you could do that as well and have like a whole bunch of like animation sequences kind of string out. So what I want to start with is the T-pose animation. And I can actually bring this down a couple. I just want to have a T-pose for like a couple of frames here just to get us started off. Then I'm going to click over to around 5. And I'm going to click on the animation button again and click on running animation. And as you can see, now we have running animation stringing all the way out. And if I come down here to the lower right hand corner, I'm just going to left click and drag all the way over until I can see the end. I believe there was what, like 860 something frames. Actually right here, I want to change this to 24 frames. There we go. So let me click all the way at the end here. Boom. And then down here in the lower left hand corner, I'm going to left click on where it says set the playback in. And that works just like an NLE, like I was saying. So that sets our end frame. We have green over here for our start frame. So if I come down here, click to front. Now we're going to click play right here. And you can see it went right from T-pose into our running animation. So now we have our animation ready and set to go. Let me click on pause. Let me go back to the front. I'm actually hit Control S just to save it. Because now what we want to do is bring in our hair. We're bringing in the fun part. So what we want to do here is click on import. And you remember in Cinema 4D how we made the hair a limbic file, the ABC file. We want to import this. So now this comes up with the GROOM import options. And this is actually brand new. So remember when we enabled those GROOM plugins, this is exactly what it's doing. Because if we didn't enable those, then it would come in as an import as it did before. Like when we did the T-pose or the running animations, if that makes sense. And it has a completely different menu and it wouldn't work at all. So if you don't see this GROOM import options, make sure you go back and enable those plugins. And then when you enable that, or when you bring in that limbic file, you'll see this pop up, and that means you're in the right place. And so I'm coming from Cinema 4D, and so there's a couple of things that we have to do here in the conversion. And so for rotation, for some reason, it doesn't bring in the rotation and the scale exactly right. And so this took me a little bit to figure these numbers out. But for rotation on the X, I found out if it's if you do it at 90 degrees, and then for the scale, we want to bring it in at -1. Now when we bring in our hair, it should exactly align up to our T-pose character here. So now I'm gonna leave everything else here as is and click import. And now it's gonna import our hair. And once it's done, we should see like a hairstyle come down here into our content browser. There we go. So I'm gonna click and drag this into our scene. I could drag it around here. It's a little bit hard to see, but you can see that we have some hair strings in here. We'll make it more legible here in a minute. But what I'm gonna do is come over here to my my details panel. Make sure you have hair selected. I'm just going to zero out my location here, and we have him exactly where we need him to be, aligned up to our mannequin here. So let me see, what's the next step I want to do? Let's actually let's bind this to our character. So I'm gonna take my hair and I'm gonna drag it down to my T-pose. And you'll see this window open up in the left. It will say choose socket or bone. We want to select none. We don't want to select it to anything or bind it to anything there. So I just selected none. But down here under groom, where it says bind groom to skeletal mesh, make sure we click that on. And that's actually going to bind our hair to our mesh now. But if I click play, it's not going to do anything because we don't have any of the Niagara dynamics in there yet. And so we'll get to there in just 1 second, but first let's create a material so we can kind of see what's going on here. So down here in my content browser, if I right click and then come over to material, and then let's just name this, I'm gonna name it hair blue, just in honor of Sonic the Hedgehog movie that just came out. And then I'm gonna double click on that. And this brings us up to our texture window. So before I do anything else, I want to click on this right here and come over to my left hand side under material. I want to come under where it says shading model, and I want to click hair. So now it's telling it that it's going to be a hair texture. And in my search panel, I'm actually going to type in hair, And right here under usage, make sure you have this turned on where it says used with hair strands. I turn that on, and now our material is ready to go. So now all we have to do is add color and add a little bit of roughness to it. So I'm going to start with my base color, left click, just drag out. And then in my search window here, I'm going to type in constant. And then under here, I'm going to do a constant 4 vector. So that should give me my RGB and alpha. So over here, yeah, you see we have RGB and alpha. But if I click on the black here, it actually brings up a color picker, which I like using this one right here instead of the color wheel. I just like using the spectrum window. So let's find like a cool blue color somewhere around there. Click OK. And then under roughness, I'm going to add a constant. So click and drag, left click, drag out, and then click on constant. And then I'm just going to do a regular constant here. And under value, I found like 0.33 was a good roughness to go with. I think that's the one that Unreal actually suggested in the documentation. So I click on save. Okay, so now we have our material saved. I could get out of this window. So now we have a hair blue material down here. Make sure you have the hair selected in the road outliner. And I'm just going to click and drag this over here under materials. So now we have, you can see that it turned our hair blue here, but it's still a little bit really thin. We can't really see what's going on. So our next step is going to be over here under groom. We have this little box here called groom. Excuse me, it says groom groups desk, DESC. Not sure what that stands for. But if I click on that and then click on this other down arrow, you see we have attributes window for hair width. So I'm just going to click and drag this over to the right. And now you can see we have some really thick hair going on there, just like what was in my example. There we go. So he's just going to be floating in the air. Actually, I could turn off atmospheric. So we'll just have him running in the dark. Something like that. All right, cool. So now we have our hairy guy here. Our hair is still not dynamic yet, but I'm going to hit Control S just to save it. So let's go back over under the hair. So now we're going to get to the fun part. We have to add the Niagara Dynamics. That's a dynamic system in Unreal. So let's come over to where it says Add Component right here, this green box. Left click, come down to Niagara Particle System. So we want to click on this. And now we have a new window come up here that says Niagara. So where we have this red box right next to it, it says None. Click on this. And then over here, you'll see it will say Groom Asset System. We click on that. Oh yeah, before that, if you're brand new to Unreal, like if you just installed the Niagara over here, you're not going to see these options right here. So what you need to do is come down to where it says View Options. Click on that. And then make sure you have Show Engine Content and Show Plugin Content. Because if you don't have those two options installed or selected, it's not going to show you any of this stuff here. So again, make sure you go to View Options. Make sure you have Show Engine Content and Show Plugin Content selected. And then you'll see the windows that are over here. And so we want to click on Groom Asset System, the Niagara system, this one in red. You click on that, and you can see that the hair actually fell down. And so now, if I come over to my sequencer, and there we go. Now we have our character running in real time. So if I come over to perspective, let's do a cinematic viewport, something like that. Give us a real cinematic view. Let's make sure our settings are on cinematic. So if I come over to settings, image scalability settings, I like working on cinematic. Just makes it pop a little bit more. Let's see what else we need to do to make it look good. I think that's about it. We can bind our lighting a little bit. So if you come over to build, let's come over, maybe set up a medium quality, do our build lighting. But this is just playing around, but yeah, that was the basics of it. So let me click the start here. There we go. So now we're really getting some shading and everything. So what I did was I came up to build lighting, and what that does is it's going to build our scene to the lighting that we have. And so we have a source light right here. So actually, if I rotate this around, get something really mysterious looking here. Could probably even bring a point light. So this is just all playing around, but yeah, you guys get the gist of what's going on. So click play, and we have running in real time. We have our hairy character here. So that's exactly how we bring in our animations and our hair from Cinema 4D into Unreal to be able to run in real time, like so. So hopefully this helped you guys out. You know, this is a real exciting time. We can actually bring our stuff from Cinema 4D and bring it into Unreal, have it running in real time, and we can actually bring in our hair now, which is really fun. So if this did help you out, make sure you leave your boy a comment down below, subscribe to the channel, and until next time, keep creating. I'll see you in the next video. Take care.